All right. It is Saturday once again, and this is the Gracious Hope Live Podcast. Unfortunately, the co host of this program, Reverend Swat S. Dede, had an emergency, family emergency, so he couldn't make it today to be part of this program. Our heartfelt prayers to him to resolve that family emergency. But we'll be here today to talk a lot about country Liberia, Brighter Day Liberia. We know our country stands on the brink of a transformative future, rising from the ashes of a painful past characterized by conflict. After years of turmoil, this country is full of resilience and it is now embracing a new era filled with hope and possibilities. Liberians are uniting to heal the communities and also foster a lasting peace, demonstrating remarkable determination in their pursuit of stability. We all yearn for peace. We all yearn for stability. We all yearn for reconciliation. However, with a renewed focus on innovation and entrepreneurship, the country is poised to unlock its vast potential, utilizing its rich cultural heritage and natural resources for the benefit of all. That's what we are hoping to see for our citizens. So this is a pivotal moment, one where collective aspirations for economic revival and vibrant civic engagement can truly flourish. So join us today on our podcast as we explore the inspiring stories and initiatives that are shaping Liberia's journey toward a brighter day, a future where prosperity and harmony can become a reality of every citizen. Yes. And so on our podcast today, we have a special guest. He is no stranger to the political wranglings of our country and also the media landscape. He is a prolific writer and author of over 10 books. Mr. Emmanuel D. Abalo will join us today to talk more about our country's life, his faith, his culture, and his books. A lot of interesting stuff today. And so we'd like to say welcome once again. And if you're just joining us, say, please jump in and opine. You can make your comments and also contribute in every way by sharing this video or this live stream today. My name is Alexander Red, the host today. And like I said earlier, Pastor Swat Dede is out today because of a family emergency, but he will be back next Saturday, the same time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And if you're in Liberia, share this video, watch this video, and also share. Click that button down below and share with your friends, your families, and your loved ones. And so we are so delighted to be here. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Brother Liberia, our special guest, Mr. Emmanuel D. Abalo, a veteran Liberian journalist. Welcome to our podcast for today, Mr. Abalo.
Thank you, Dr. Red. It's good to be with you. And our prayer is that all goes well for the Reverend Swadede. But I look forward to our discussion. Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, sure. A lot of things we have to talk about. You got a lot of books, man. You've been writing, analyzing the Liberian landscape, the media landscape, the media and conflict on Liberia, historical analysis, Liberia's depressed economic posture, investigative journalism in Liberia, a practical guide helping young journalists to be guided by all means to know what they write, know all their woos, all the W's, who, where, what, and the rest. And you got into faith and peace in our country, liberty hijack. And there's a whole lot here we have to talk about because it takes time, energy, and resources to find yourself doing something productive for your country. And we are so proud of you for contributing to the national discourse. And I know it's a solitary journey if you're writing a book. I know how it is as an author myself. And so, where have you found strength to carry on since you left Liberia as a journalist, resettling in the United States?
Thank you, Dr. Red. I'm quite fortunate that my creativity and with the blessings of God and the support of my family and the community, I was able to channel a lot of that creativity into memorializing some of the very pertinent issues as they affect our common, patronage, Liberia. So um, while in Liberia, I practiced journalism that was a service to the community, a very humble service to the country. But equally so, I suppose that prepared me to develop my creativity and branch into authorship. And so, being in the Western world, I'm fortunate that I have all of the resources and I have the time to memorialize some of these things. Unlike some of our colleagues back home in Liberia, who are not so fortunate to have the ability to publish. And I'll tell you an interesting story. As we speak, a colleague of ours, Mr. Gabriel Williams, former official of the press union, and myself, we are working on publishing posthumously a novel by one of Liberia's best and finest journalists, the late Gus Jiplo. He left the manuscript. Unfortunately, we lost him, but we're working to publish that manuscript. We have more to come on that. But those are the kinds of things that give value to what we do, and we're committed to doing that. So I'm grateful that I have the opportunity and I have the resources to be able to publish. More to come.
Yes, yes. And we'll get into some of the nitty gritty of your books you've been writing because you talk a lot about why our political system is not effective or efficient. And you gave some very good points that I agree with. And also, you look at our community, the faith community, also looking at the need to have our citizens actually hear the right gospel, the right gospel to benefit our spiritual life, because the physical and the spiritual, they have to match together in order for you to effectuate your faith in a society. And so, Mr. Abalo, we'll get into that. Let us look at your faith. All through the years, you've been doing journalism from back home, and now you are back here in the United States, resettled after all these years. What do you see so different now if you memorialize what you have seen and experienced here, and then your country, Liberia, in conjunction with your faith?
So I'll defer to my upbringing and my own spiritual journey over the years, starting in Liberia. So I grew up in a Christian family, um, and I'm fortunate that I had the exposure to very good Christian upbringing. And the values of my Christian faith were very integral to my practice of journalism. Alex, you have worked in the media. You know that as journalists, we are committed to being the voices of the voiceless and committed to reporting the truth. We know that the truth has no equal, and sometimes we run afoul of people who find it difficult to maintain a good relationship with the truth. And that is where sometimes our own values supersede that of um, personal gain. And so working in the media has been supported by my own faith. Um, Growing up in a society that is also a conservative, religious conservative society, but I found it difficult to understand how, as a conservative society, we also had a very difficult environment where the truth oftentimes is stepped on, and there are a lot of confusion about how we can have a conservative religious society, but at the same time struggle to maintain our allegiance to the truth and the common humanity that we exhibit to one another. So I'm fortunate that, as a Christian growing up in Liberia, I was able to maintain that grip on my own religious beliefs, not necessarily imposing that on individuals or institutions I interacted with, but at the same time, using my faith to ensure that my job was done in an ethical manner and the truth always superseded. So that's how I approach that. Even in the Western world, if anything, it is a more complicated society because then you have all of these forces coming together in society and trying to impact who you are as a person, your values, and all of that. And so it is even more important in the Western world to actually demonstrate your faith in action. And part of doing that is to be able to help our people back home through my work, whether it is continuing to practice journalism from this point or from this area, or writing and raising those issues that our people need to get their hands around. So that's how I approach all of this.
Yes, yes. And I believe you have seen the big difference of what it means to live in your homeland, Liberia, and then live in the Western world like the United States, and how people culturally carry out their way of doing things. And the big difference is to take advantage of the opportunity to also share whatever knowledge that you have with our colleagues back home. Now, you're talking about journalism, your upbringing, and how to pursue the truth has always been an ethical value for you. Nowadays, we see in Liberia the proliferation of the media landscape everywhere, from radio to television and a lot of podcasts. Um, what do you think is going on in our country when it comes to dissemination of information? Do you think it's ethically correct, or do you see a problem that you believe you can identify and nurture those who are aspiring to get into the field of journalism?
There are several factors impacting the journalism profession in Liberia. The professional disposition of the profession, the professional disposition of journalism has some challenges. And those challenges are the direct result of the erosion of ethical practice of the craft. Now, there are also economic challenges that some of the journalists back home and would-be journalists are facing, and that kind of interferes with their ability to be committed to the craft. In a society where there is high unemployment, there is rank poverty, uh, and there's no system of governance that supports young people um, achieving their best potential. These things can impact those who aspire. It doesn't have to be journalism alone. It impacts a lot of the institutions and disciplines that young people may want to pursue. So when you look at the challenges that young journalists in Liberia face today, it has come about because there are people who have a lot of interest in joining the profession and all of that. We simply have lost a lot of the role models, and we've lost those supporting entities in journalism that would encourage young people to professionally pursue journalism. There are some efforts to help. I know that there's the University of Liberia School of Communications. There's the Peter Kwekwe School of Journalism. There's another one um, run by a former reporter of the BBC. All of them are trying. I think the turning point in journalism, especially modern day journalism, came about with the establishment of the School of Journalism at the University of Liberia in the late 80s. I, along with several others, were some of the young ones who benefited with the first graduates of that institution, and we had very credible and very sound professors and people of integrity, impeccable character who were able to launch that school of journalism. The late Professor T. Nelson Williams, peace be to his ashes. Professor Lamini Warite, Professor Joe Mulba and Wiede Koba. All of these people have they've contributed to developing the craft professionally, giving journalists an opportunity to actually practice. And so we who benefited from that were able to make a difference. Nowadays, as much as we have those things in place, there's been a deterioration and an erosion of the effort to instill journalism. I did discuss that in one of my books, the challenges that journalists face, especially with the fact that online now you have people who have cell phones, and we see the outcome of that. I'm not knocking anybody's hustle. People have cell phones and they're journalists. They're called citizen journalists. There's nothing you can do about that. But at the same time, as a real journalist, as a practicing ethical trained journalist, people can see the difference. Mm-hmm. People can see the difference in your work compared to those who are citizen journalists. And the citizen journalists are here for good. They're not going anywhere. Yeah. So we have to work along, we have to deal with them in the same space.
Yeah, no, but you see, it is also a bad public consumption of information when citizen journalists are doing yellow journalism that is pushing their interest or the interest of a politician or something else. It could be business. And we see that increasing on a higher level in our country. And we have like the Press Union of Liberia, the Association of Liberian Journalists in America's ALJA, and other media outlets that are concerned, and at times they tend to call their attention to what can be done to have the public consume the rightful information. And we know all societies, there will always be people who will twist the information or the truth, like you said, so that they can forego the ethical consideration that is enwrapped in what it means to actually disseminate the truth to the public. And we know information as a whole can either break or make a nation. And journalism, plays a very, very good role in that. Now, in your book about the historical analysis of journalism, you talk a whole lot about some of the dangling reality of journalists, some of the things that they face in the past, like some of the hardships, and also how they can still look forward with an encouragement that, yes, you are in the field, you experience these things. However, how do you muster the courage to move ahead? Now, with your personal experience in our homeland, Liberia, when it comes to journalism, and now, is there anything that you can say so inspiring to those journalists who go through the hoops every day, wanting to get to higher heights in the profession?
So one of the things I identified when writing that book on the media and conflict in Liberia was the fact that the birth of Liberia, the historical review of the birth of Liberia it came about from a very painful exercise for those who founded the country. The attempt was to instill and to establish and to nurture and to support democracy, Western democracy in West Africa at the time in the mid 1800s. A lot of the institutions that were established to support that did not do very well. There's the argument that the establishment of Liberia was very flawed. And so that flawed establishment of the country led to a lot of problems, including, and we can also argue that it also led to some of the civil conflicts and the instability that we see today. So in the Western world, ingrained in society are democratic institutions, the media, and all of these things. And people are somewhat educated that the media is a friend, is a watchdog of society, and we support them because this is the only way we hold power to account, using the media and all of that. When Liberia was founded, those ideals were not instituted and they were not grounded in governance at the time. The media was seen as troublemakers. Calling governance to account was sacrilegious. The mentality, the village mentality of not challenging the elders was what was used against the media. And we know that doesn't work because then it becomes everybody supporting governance, even if it's at the detriment of society. Since the 1980s, there's been a lot of progress made in the media landscape to ensure that the media is a part of, the democratic revolution that's happening in Liberia. There are still issues. Why we no longer realistically worry about getting picked up by security forces and put in jail or disappear for good, there are forces still at work that impinge on the ability of media personnel, our own internal, professional, ethical considerations. Those things are there. Internally, we still have work to do as media personnel. Journalists and media personnel don't have, the kind of support or training. The business aspect of the media is not there. Business houses, media houses, can barely pay media personnel who work for them. Advertisements, getting contracts to support the paper. It's those things, are used as weapons against the media. And so when the media has to continue to struggle and not being seen as a part of, the governance structure in the country, all of these things will impact the nature of information that gets to the public. And obviously, there are people in governance, even in private society, who will find opportunities to use the media for their own, gain. It is not government alone that is a threat to the media. Private institutions, big companies, private individuals who are powerful, economically powerful, they can suppress the media to the point where they can take the media out of business. They can also bring legal suits and threaten media, houses and close them down. These are the kinds of challenges that we deal with. So in the West, media houses are more concerned about editorial policies and new owners taking over the media and calling the shots in the newsroom. In Africa, we're still worrying about internal ethical training for individuals. We're worrying about being able to pay journalists a decent wage, being able to manage a media house as a real business, turning over profits, pursuing advertising. Those are the kinds of things we're worrying about. So there are challenges, still challenges, in the media landscape back home.
Mm-hmm. Can you still hear me? Okay. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I can still hear you.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I'm glad that you made some points on that, because it is worrisome if the public as a whole is looking up to the watchdog, the journalism profession, to write what is right, write what is correct, and feeding them with misinformation pretty much creates a dicey environmental atmosphere. And we can see how disinformation has been fed to the public, that led into our conflict we are in today.
Yeah.
The war, or up to the war, the rice riot, and then the assassination came, and then after that, we were hoping for a new dawn of a revolution, and things got worse and worse and worse until we got into the Civil War. And so we've all have our own story. We all have our own story regarding hardship during the war, and where we are now as Liberians. But we still have the positive attitude to see our country growing to become one of the most vibrant African countries. Now, you remember, we have historically Liberia as one of the oldest African independent country, and you delve into your book regarding the issue of impunity, the issue of public officials who are not doing well with the resources when it comes to management. And there's a whole lot you said in your book. But to be specific here, I will put one on the screen here, one of your books, the one with Liberia's depressed economic posture. Now, for someone who would like to get a copy of this book, what will be your synopsis regarding this one, regarding the depressed economic posture?
Let me just make a quick correction there. Liberty Hijacked is a book written by another media colleague, Kai G. Wule.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
not
well,
one of my books. So I
yeah,
just
yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to make
You
that clear.
attributed to him as you complimented him, right?
Yes,
As
yes,
someone you he also Unati Addison and some other
yes,
individuals in our society
yes.
complimenting them for being around when you were in doing journalism back in Liberia, and how you were able to gain certain aspiration in your profession from them.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Dr. Red, it's very important that you brought up this idea, especially the book about Liberia's depressed economic posture. This is an issue I thought to write on, because it doesn't matter what discipline you're in back in Liberia. Whether you're in the religious community, whether you're in journalism, whether you're in the private sector, whether you're in government, uh, the economic depression knows no name or face. And so I thought it was important that I wrote about the long-term impact of the mismanagement of the economy in Liberia. Those those issues that leaders, whether prior or now, need to grapple with to address the chronic and depressed state of our economy are still there. And those things impact our society in a very detrimental way. And we see that those seeds of a depressed community, Liberian community, can lead to instability. This is why Liberia has not recovered. Liberia is still considered a post-war country, even after all of these years. And I thought it was important to delve and to examine and to analyze why we still have a country that is still unstable. It's because, one, the economy has not been given its proper attention by leaders, uh, either because they are incompetent or they simply are overwhelmed by the challenges that the economy poses. But um, I will venture to say that there are people in Liberia, there are institutions in Liberia who are willing to come together, um, if we can put aside politics, and deal with each other as Liberians to address the economic issues. This whole idea that you're not in my political party, so you will not serve in government. The country cannot benefit from your expertise and your knowledge because you're not politically aligned, hurts the entire country. So we need to move beyond that. The economic depression that our country faces is such that it is no longer a political, alignment does not contribute to resolving that issue. That's why I wrote that book.
Yes, yes. And for all our viewers, I would like to say welcome to the Gracious Hope Live podcast. We are here every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and we talk a whole lot about country Liberia. Our platform is based on promoting and preserving the Liberian Christian heritage. And today is our special guest, a veteran Liberian journalist and author of many books, over 10 books he has written, Mr. Emmanuel D. Abalo. And so opine, comment like some of you doing. And so we also follow and share this video as well. We will be right back. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Yes, we are back here with our special guest, Mr. Emmanuel D. Abalo. Now, let's get to a broader area of our country, or may I say, a brighter structure of our country, which of course has to do with the faith community, particularly focusing on the Christian community. And I'm going to put a quote up here from your book, an excerpt from your book, where you said traditional Christian teachings, which emphasize humility, service to others, and compassion for the poor, often clash with the prosperity gospel's focus on personal gain and materialism. Critics maintain that the prosperity gospel distorts Christianity by equating God's favor with wealth rather than spiritual growth or social justice. Now, you go on to say competition and focus on prosperity theology. So you said the rise of numerous churches has also led to increasing competition for followers, leading many church leaders to adopt a message focused on prosperity theology. They believe that faithfulness will lead to financial and material blessings. This focus diverts attention from addressing broader societal issues such as violence, corruption, and human rights abuses. Again, these churches often promise the poor quick financial blessings, miracles, and deliverance from personal hardships, but do little to engage in advocacy for structural changes in society that could address the root causes of poverty and inequality. Now, looking at this code, there's a whole lot you say in there. So what about prosperity gospel? What do you see going on in the church community in our country, Liberia? What is going wrong so far?
So, Dr. Red, the church, the religious community is also a major stakeholder in Liberia. We have to approach them as such. They are an integral part of our society, and a lot of our actions that we demonstrate in public comes from our own values, whatever values we have from the church, whether when we say the church holistically, we mean the mosque, the temple, or whatever. And so, as stakeholders in the Liberian society, or any society for that matter, it is important to underscore that the position of the church and the mission of the church should always be to uplift the society. And it is a little disappointing that nowadays a lot of our people, and again, because of the economic depravity and depression that our people see, they have now turned to the church where they are told that in order for you to succeed, your condition is such that your wealth is based on your ability to contribute to the church, because God wants you to succeed. And the way you succeed is by planting seeds, as we know in the prosperity gospel. And so that's where I came from. And so I'm saying that our people have had enough. Our people have been traumatized over the years. And I must credit the church for, the yeoman's job that it did with the onset of the conflict in the 1980s, between 1980 and 2005. And men of conviction, prelates and imams who put their lives on the line to help to bring peace to that country. I must commend those individuals. The Archbishop Michael K. Francis, Imam, the Muslim Imam, his name is just escaping me. Bishop Brown, all of these people, Bishop, Inez, and all of these people who contributed. And we watched these men, people of God, contribute and stand up to the forces of violence and the warlords in calling for peace. They led very, credibly. They led their congregations very credibly, and they made a lot of difference in bringing peace to the country. Now, don't get me wrong. No one has a monopoly on who God is going to elect or select to lead any church, for that matter. The prophet Ma or the prophet in Monrovia, who has been called to serve, he is equally, capable of leading God's people. But what we've seen over time, and that has been in recent times, when we say recent time, in the last 20, 25 years, is the mushrooming of churches. We've seen confusion in the theology of churches, not the mainstream church. In the little churches that have mushroomed, you see a lot of confusion in their theology. What is it that they're committed to? A lot of this stuff has to do with, healing people. Every problem that our people are now facing is all spiritual. Mm-hmm. That is concerning. For every problem that our people now face, it is spiritual. When do they minister to other needs of our people? That has become a problem. And that is why I wrote, calling the church to its responsibility of meeting the needs and leading people to the gospel, the good news. And not necessarily the prosperity gospel, where people who are already depressed and traumatized, who have little or nothing, are encouraged to give all to the church with the hope that they will become wealthy. A lot of these people have been giving their pennies and whatever to the church for the last 25 years, and they are still in the same situation. Again, this is no criticism on some of these churches, but the theology has been lost. We have to come back to the theology of the gospel. And I come to this realization, and I come to make this statement from my own faith and how that has helped me in seeing how we can address the issues that face humanity, not from asking people to support and making people to believe that every problem that they have is spiritual and somebody is out to kill them. That is where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and you're coming from a very good perspective because we see the mushrooming of a lot of churches in our country now. It is all about deliverance, evil spirit, and they are not teaching people how to do things for themselves, which, of course, education is very important. If someone knows how to handle the tools to work, that you train them, they will go to work, if work is around. Instead of you saying, well, there's a miracle, you got to sit on your couch and then a job will come to you. No, you have to be determined to learn the trade. You have to be determined to learn everything that is about that particular job that you want to know. So just preaching that God will bless you and give you the favor. Of course, it sounds good, but it's not about tickling the ear. It's about the reality that this person needs the skills,
Right.
to work. So the
Right.
criticism is fair, and it is a very good observation. But you also got into why religious leaders also are part of the political system in a way in which you turn politicization,
Hmm.
if I'm pronouncing that word right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You say, okay, we said the proliferation of churches has also led to more extraordinary politicization of religious leaders, with many pastors and bishops becoming closely aligned with political figures. In some cases, religious leaders use their influence to endorse or align with politicians in exchange for favors, undermining their moral authority and making it difficult for them to speak out against injustice and corruption. This alignment with political power creates a conflict of interest, as these leaders are less likely to challenge corrupt practices when they benefit from the system. And, this is a big problem. It has been going in our country before, from the Dole regime up to other leadership that came to the fore. And up to now, we're seeing that church leaders or leaders of some churches align with the political system in order to be favored for becoming maybe a board member. I know some churches, I know some bishops and pastors who are board members with some of the auxiliary agencies of the government, and they work for them. And that, of course, according to you, I mean, it ties their hand to speak out against the same place that they are getting their the income.
Exactly. There's a whole school of thought, a whole movement called the Africanization and the Liberianization of the church. That speaks exactly to what we're discussing here, because uh, religion in Africa is very unique, and there are those who argue that Western society and what religion preaches in Western society not necessarily is good for the African continent. Let me make an important point. Prior to the war in 1990, all during the years of the 80s, when I practiced journalism and all of that, we covered the Liberian Council of Churches, the LCC at the time. It was made up of just a handful of mainstream organizations, religious organizations: the Catholic Church, the Methodist Church, the Lutheran Church, and then there was also the Liberian, religious council or whatever, including the Muslim community and all of that. These were individuals who. Now, the Liberian Council of Churches, believe it or not, when we cover them, they did not allow these smaller churches to be a part of the Liberian Council of Churches, on the condition that their theology wasn't clear.
Mm-hmm.
The theology of these small churches wasn't
Mm-hmm.
that clear, and it would impact and influence the overall goal of the Liberian Council of Churches. And so if you had a little prophet church, community church, it was difficult to find that church as a member of the Liberian Council of Churches. Because look at what that little church will be preaching
Mm-hmm.
compared to the overarching goal of the Liberian Council of Churches. So when you have the Africanization of the church, There is no separation of church and state. The lines are blurred. You know, a bishop can be a minister in the government, and he makes civic decision. He makes decision not as a religious, individual when he's in public service, and even if he makes decision as a public servant, sometimes those decisions are highly questionable. And so when you have those blurred lines, the church and state and people interchangeably, becoming members on the board and endorsing political, candidates and pouring, blessings or oil blessings on them. I mean, it becomes difficult for the ordinary, less sophisticated religious adherent to clearly understand what am I what am I committed to? Where is the gospel in all of this? So that has become a problem. Maybe in the Western world, especially in the US where we live, you see how the separation of church and state may not be perfect, but it serves a greater purpose. And even people who are fanatical about religion and all of that, there's a line that they will not cross, and even the government will not cross into church matters and all of that. I think that helps. But again, in the African setting, in the Liberian setting, those lines are blurred, and it's now becoming a problem. And it is becoming acceptable. That is another problem. It is easily acceptable in the Liberian situation where a bishop, or whatever, can endorse and support and open a church, and at the same time, serving government.
Yeah, yeah, and we have that going on, and there are some people who have counter argument relating to that, stating that, well, we are to serve, and so if we serve the church, we serve the public in a political arena, and so we shouldn't have problem with that because, or no one should have problem with that because it's all about serving and giving back to our country. That's a counter argument. Some of them would say. But if we look at the reality of our churches in Liberia now, we see division going on. We have a lot of denominations, and they have all espouse different values, or a lot of different values and principles that is stick to wanting the church to work with the government in every way. Of course, a good thing to work with the government, but it's a an alignment for prosperity and peace in the interests of the citizens. That's fine, especially when it comes to the church preaching to the government about building roads, a road network for the citizenry, and other things that will be beneficial to the citizenry. But the thing is that if you are a church leader and you are in alignment with government jobs, or if you are in alignment with politicians and seeking government job and even receiving a job, how will you speak against the same system that you're working for? It makes it hard. And that, of course, we can see a strangulation in some human rights advocates who are now working for the government, but they can't speak out about injustice. Why? Because they are part of the system. And if they venture to do that, they will be cut off or fired from their job. So again, it goes back to the personal preference of my economic well-being or my financial well-being instead of the true aspect of the gospel, that is living by the truth and speaking the truth of power. And you did mention about Archbishop Francis, Archbishop Francis, right? Who spoke with no fear. He spoke with no fear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and forthright, speaking truth to power is what we need in our country now.
I worked as a news director at the ELCM, the erstwhile ELCM Community Radio, which was owned by the Catholic Church at the time. Bishop was, the Archbishop in Monrovia, and a lot of the work that we did, human rights, including media work as the voice of the Catholic Church, the values of the Catholic Church, and all of that, was a direct result of the influence and the type of leadership that Bishop provided, not only in the Catholic Church, not only in society, but as an individual. This was somebody, Bishop Francis was somebody of very core, very serious conviction to the truth. And so we were able to, to do our work without fear or favor because we knew that the bishop, backed us. There are two instances I can cite here. One, when I worked at the radio station in the news department, there was a gentleman who worked in the executive mansion directly in the office of President Samuel Doe. And he was privy to a lot of conversations because the president would listen to our newscast compared to other radio stations and the national radio. And, the commentary, will be there when he listened to, our newscast at ELCM. And he was a member of the church, and he would come to mass on Sunday, and he would pretty much tell us, man, that story you all carried on this day, the chief was so mad. But that was us doing our work, knowing that the bishop had no fear of standing up to the government. Secondly, I remember very vividly an incident in 1985 during the elections. We got word that soldiers in the BTC were voting. They were just stuffing ballots. And so we went to the BTC, and for sure, that was happening. And there was an army officer, Penu, I forget his first name. He made a threatening remark, which we captured on tape. He said that if President Doe didn't win, he would overthrow the government in 3 days. He made that on tape. He made that statement on tape. We recorded that, went to the station, and because we were on the air that day, election day, 1985, and we aired that statement. I mean, that was bold for us to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, we did what we had to do, knowing that, the bishop was there, nothing would happen to us. But then after work, how do you go home? You live in a community where anybody could pick you up between the radio station and home. Yes. So those are the kinds of things we faced, but we were always assured that the bishop, will speak, and he will speak forcefully. He will not compromise. And we don't have a lot of that happening today. And we want the religious community to take on his responsibility. We're not saying to be in confrontation. The religious community can be a support of the government and all of that, but speak up for social justice, for justice. Speak up for, the economic depravity that people are going through. Speak up. That is your role. Know what your values are as a church and speak to that. But you cannot speak if you're focused on surviving under the prosperity gospel. People are more concerned about giving to the church. Bring all you can to the church. You're going to be rich down the road. You can't focus on that and at the same time speak for people who need, who need help when it comes to pointing them to the gospel.
Exactly, and that's a reality. And just before we close here, I know you also look at some of the things that are hindering our political progress, that is delivering services to the needy, our citizenry. And in your book, you have an excerpt here about the excuses public officials use for their shortcomings. And you did a very good research from some other sources too. The government representatives in Liberia often find different reasons to explain why they have not maintained ethical behavior or public trust. The explanations public officials provide demonstrate that decision-making processes and manifest each official's internal moral struggle. The system is corrupt mentally. Numerous public officials believe they must participate in corruption because they operate within an already corrupt system. With the excuse everyone is doing it, they protect themselves from personal responsibility. This excuse shows acceptance of existing conditions which leads to ongoing unethical behavior instead of trying to create change. Limited resources. Public officials often point to insufficient funding and resources when they cannot carry out essential reforms. They use the financial constraint excuse by without money, we cannot take action to avoid accountability for their lack of response. The reason that authorities use to avoid delivering necessary social services and development projects which could enhance people's living conditions is frequently invoked as a justification for their neglect. Political pressure. Political pressure stands as another frequent excuse where political party politics and external influences create pressure. Political party allegiance binds officials who worry about political backlash if they stray from the prescribed party positions. The argument goes as follows: I must abide by my party's mandate. The phrase, I cannot act against my party's wishes, functions as a justification for officials who neglect their constituents' need to maintain party loyalty. Now, all that are listed here are the reality on the ground, not delivering service to where they should be.
Exactly. Those excuses don't work. Um, and it comes from the lack of moral rectitude and ability to be innovative and a commitment to find solutions, to think outside of the norms, and to be able to sacrifice personally for the less fortunate in society. Our people, public officials need to do better. Those excuses don't work. Our people need, our people have entrusted these people with a lot of responsibility, and they must demonstrate that they understand what their responsibility is as a public servant and not make these excuses, because over time it has not worked. The country has not made progress. We continue to wallow in a lot of instability, and that has to change. I hope that um, our society will raise the kind of people, men of conviction, people of conviction will step forward and do the right thing so that our people can benefit from good
Yes,
governance.
okay, baby, that's true. Okay, so then looking across your books here, except for the Liberty Hijack, which is by Kai, I don't know how I picked that up. Okay, but you got Faith and Peace, the media and conflict in Liberia, a historical analysis, Liberia's depressed economic posture. And this one here, I'm not seeing the title correct, but I think it's about public. Which one with this guy with his hand up in the air?
Yeah, that one is morality in public service in Liberia.
Okay.
So that has been a struggle because of some of the things we discussed here. Serving as a public person in Liberia has become quite challenging because of the internal struggle that people have in doing the right thing, and that has led to our society having some of the worst public servants, poor governance, and all of that. And I also wanted to indicate that there is a couple of children's book that I also wrote, and there's another one that just came out recently, and it speaks about it's a fictional copy that speaks about
What is the title?
corruption. Yeah, corruption in public service in Philadelphia. Really, it's a fictional book, but so those are all very good books, and I find pleasure in writing these things because they fulfill my long held conviction that this is how we contribute to making society a better place, especially back home.
Yes, Daisy the saddest dolphin.
That's a
Um,
children's book. Yes,
children. Okay.
yes.
Beats bullets and justice.
That is this non-fictional book set
Mhm.
in Philadelphia. And I'm
Mm.
also very proud of the first book I actually wrote. The first two books has to do with Liberia, the dawn of a nation and evolution of its military, how the country was birthed and how it evolved, how the military evolved, how we got into conflicts in 1980, how it's trying now to maintain, a good image, and that's a very good book. And there's also another book I also find very, satisfying. It's called Enemies of the State. That is a fictional book set in Monrovia, with a very, real story that with some, fictional characters about, the peacekeepers and people who have a problem, living with the truth. So for people who are interested, all of these books are on Amazon. If they just, put in my name in the search engine, they'll be able to find whatever, if they like to.
Okay, yeah, because someone asked here, they said, how can I get a copy of that book?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's on Amazon.com. Go there.
Yes.
And do you have the Kindle version where they can read?
Yes, most of these books have the electronic copy, and they can
Okay.
download those and read. But I'll be remiss, Dr. Red, without if we close this conversation without paying tribute to your personal struggle and what you did for the press in Liberia. I've not had a chance to say thank you to you or to the Reverend Dede for what you did, standing up to tyranny, standing up to violence, standing up for the truth during your time in Liberia. So I want to take this opportunity. And again, I think it will be good to remind people of from whence you come. A lot of our people in the West only know Dr. Alex Red, but they have little or no idea on how you got to this point in your life and how you almost lost your life dealing and standing up to tyranny and the agents of violence back home. So for doing that, I want to thank you, you and Dr. And you and Reverend Dede for what you did for the press. And hopefully the press union will continue to survive because of these sacrifices.
Thank you, Mr. Abalo. And all of the contributions that you are making toward our country's development and also peace and stability, we applaud you for that. And for those who are listening to, you are one of the founders of the Association of Liberian Journalists in the United States, America Alja, and in your journalistic pursuit, now becoming an author is another whole level that we all glad that you are in a better place to give back to your country, and that's what you're doing. So we applaud you for that once more, and we will keep you in our minds in the future for another appearance, a guest appearance on our podcast.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Dr. Red. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you. And as we part ways here, we will like to encourage all of you watching right now to get some of his books. I have some of his books here. I've been reading them. You can go to Amazon.com. Whether you live in Liberia or wherever, which part of the world, where it doesn't matter. You can get an electronic version. If you can't order the hard copy or the soft copy, you can get an electronic version and then read that. And it will be a great thing for you to do. Promote your own Liberian. Okay, we have to be proud of our own authors and those who make the effort to educate us. Thank you, Mr. Abalo.
Thank you again. Be well.
All right. And this is how we conclude today's edition of our podcast. My name is Alexander Red, the host here, and Reverend Dede will be back here next Saturday, the same time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will continue with our podcast. Until then, we will see you again, and goodbye for now. Don't forget to share a copy of this podcast by clicking the button below, share, so that your friends, your families, and loved ones can be a part of our podcast. Until we'll see you next Saturday, from our end today, we'd like to say thank you so much for joining us, and may you have a pretty good weekend. Bye for now.